Nation. The hobby is the people. Weekly news and interviews. It's your number one source. Sports Card Nation. The hobby is the people. Sports Card Nation.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to episode 297. Back again. Hope everyone is doing well. Got a great guest on today, gentlemen. I've met him numerous times, but really got to talk to him quite a bit at the Cleveland National in anticipation of having him on the show. And he's built a company into a verb, and you'll hear us talk about that. But Zion Cases, Clint Anderson, and they're the premier case maker in the hobby, to the fact that we call almost any case now a Zion case. And so happy to have him on the show today. We're going to talk about, the grind, and he's going all over the country, and is wanted all over the country. He can't be in sometimes two places at the one time. But we're gonna chop up how he built his company. We're gonna chop up some hobby as well. So we're gonna take a quick 30-second break and then bring on Clint Anderson from Zion Cases.
Iron Sports Cards is your number one source for all your PSA and other grading submissions. Their elite status improves turnaround times. Heck, they even provide the card savers. Their chat rooms provide updates on all your submissions. They also offer wax options and single cards to cover all the bases. Check them out on Facebook at Iron Sports Cards Group or on the web at ironsportscards.com, or even give them a call at 1-877-IRON-PSA. Rob's got you covered.
Real excited to talk to my next guest on the Sports Card Shop guest line. He's started a company. It's not new now, but it's become, I'm going to talk to him about, but it's become a verb. And it's always a good thing when your company becomes a verb, but he's also a collector as well. We're going to dive into that as well. So happy to have Clint Anderson from Zion Cases. Welcome.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate it, John.
All right. So let's start off with kind of where it all began for you as far as your entrance into the hobby as a collector.
Yeah, I mean, like a lot of people my age, in my younger 40s, grew up in this, the late 80s to early 90s era where there was a lot of collecting, and I'm just south of Chicago, so Michael Jordan was obviously very, very big at that time, which I think spawned some of it for me just in that area, just because it was easy, right? You wanted to collect somebody or be involved in some sort of sports, aspect of things, and collecting sports cards. And a baseball guy myself, it just made a ton of sense to collect some of those guys, Ryan Sandberg and stuff like that. A lot of Chicago teams when I first started. And then just like most people, right, everything kind of stops in the 90s for the most part as you get a little older and other things are going on. And then the hobby takes a little bit of a break for a little bit as well. I happen to be working at my previous employer that I worked for about 17 years. Was walking through a Walmart for them as I was going in there to check one of the sets that we were doing there, and seen baseball cards sitting on the shelf. And so that interests me. I didn't know that there was baseball cards still out there in the world. I just, I hadn't thought about them since I was a kid. So went over there, grabbed a box, and it kind of started from there. That was in 2012, 2013. Ended up getting in touch with a distributor locally in 2014, and became a breaker on Facebook for a long time. I say long time, it's 3 or 4 years, and just had a nice little tight knit group of about 400, 500 people. A lot of guys I knew in the group, a lot of networking of just people that I met at shows, things like that. And that was like the start of it, getting back into the industry. Essentially, I didn't think it would get to this point, that's for sure, but it definitely was a fun moment to see sports cards again and get that feel, from when I was a kid as well. So
yeah, no doubt. That's the beauty of the hobby too, Clint. Right? If you have to take a break or a pause or life happens,
yeah.
It is there waiting for you. I always tell people, sometimes I'll get someone will message me or email me like sort of burnt out or I'm kind of frustrated. And I'm like, take a pause. A pause might be like a weekend away or a month or longer. That's up to the individual. And sometimes that's not the worst thing in the world, because the nice thing is it can recharge your batteries, and then you come back, and sometimes you don't appreciate something till you miss it a little bit. And then you come back, in your case, it brought back the nostalgia factor for you seeing cards again. And here you are doing all sorts of big things. When it comes to like your focus on what you PC, or is it, you mentioned Chicago, like superstars, is it Chicago centric kind of players or athletes?
So my PC is kind of fluid. I'll be honest on that. And I mean that because I sold a lot of my collection to start Zion cases because I wanted to fund this business that I had an idea around. So I did sell a lot of iconic cards, things like that, that nothing that was absolutely massive, but stuff that meant something to me, whether it be some rookie cards from some old Cubs guys, Chicago Bulls stuff, which would be some more secondhand Michael Jordan stuff. Never owned an actual rookie yet, but maybe one day on that one, that would be pretty cool. But the PC always, ironically enough, we had a fantasy baseball team, and our fantasy baseball team was more around dynasty and getting some draft picks, things like that. So Bowman, was a very big interest for me right off the jump. And that's one. Chris Bryant was a huge guy in 2013-14 that I really wanted to grab. So I have a little bit of a lean towards the 2013 Bowman style card. I just loved the Chris Bryant card at that time. And then Judge has it as well, right? So it looks pretty cool from that perspective. But just, it went from like prospects, some of the old guys that I found graded, had some fun holding on to them for a while. And then now I grab things that I think are cool looking. I like, have some older cards like a Wayne Gretzky rookie that I liked. I just, thought that'd be cool to own a Wayne Gretzky rookie. It's a 6, so it's not like something absolutely massive, but it's still a very cool card. PSA 6, by the way, on that. I'm sure everybody got the reference, but just in case.
Yeah, and we're PSA 6 brothers, because you can't see it because my big body's blocking it, but behind me is a Gretzky PSA 6. So
that's awesome, dude. Hey, there we go.
We're in the same fraternity,
Heck
and that's a great grade on that card.
It is. Yep.
Yes. So, but go ahead.
For sure. And then to get into like modern, I do like a lot of the modern cards. I think they look cool. I think there's a lot of cool things that are kind of coming out, and I can see why some of these the newer collectors like draw towards the modern a little bit and how they look, because they're making some really cool stuff. But I collect a guy that most people aren't probably going to know, but Io DeSumo is a basketball player from the Illini, Illinois basketball team, which is 20 minutes from where I grew up. So I'm a huge Illinois basketball fan. And so I, grabbed his cards and kind of PC'd him a little bit. And I actually seen this last year. He's starting to do well in his third year. So started off really good his rookie season, but then ended up getting into his second year, didn't do that well, did okay. But then his third year, he's taking on a bigger role and whatnot. So, that's fun to see some really cool cards of him, right? Really sought after cards that I have that I bought for dirt cheap, and having him as an interesting PC item. Most people look at me when I go, "Hey, you got any Io DeSumo?" They're like, "I don't even know who that is." So
it sounds like, with all due respect, it almost sounds like he's something you need like an antibiotic for.
Right? Yeah. No, I've gotten some interesting responses in the years or the last.
And here's the thing. because of the connection with Illinois, that's where you grew up, and it's fun to see, like you said, see a guy kind of start well, then a little bit of struggles, and then like now he's figuring the league out. Things are slowing down for him, and you're not collecting them because obviously you think he's a pretty good ball player, but you're not necessarily collecting them. You live in California, but you're collecting Aaron Judge. You're not a Yankee. That you have that connection, that local area, that regional connection, and now he's kind of stepping his game up. So I think that's always fun when that sort of stuff happens.
It is fun. Yeah, for sure. 100%.
So let's talk about, you mentioned you get break in and then collecting, how did Zion, how did Zion, the birth of Zion, like what was it that caused you to, form the company when you started? Obviously you're in a different spot now, but when you first said, I'm going to do this, kind of talk about, that process.
Yeah. Was 2016, 17. So I liked working with wood and doing some cool things with it, whether it was doing engraving or staining or painting something and adding some vinyls to it. I had all these different ideas. So I was in my breaking days, I would also do display wall displays. And I would do one-offs, and had some fun doing that. So I always had an idea of taking the cards kind of to the, where do they go from here? You get them, and then where do you put them? Do you display them? Do you put them in a shoebox like most of us do? Or a white box, one of the white graded boxes, things like that. Some of the storage options weren't, I don't think, ideal for the fact that my collection started to accumulate. And I'm like, man, I got a lot of money sitting here and I don't really know where to put it. And I don't really like it sitting in a shoebox. Don't really like it in the white cardboard boxes. So wheels started turning while I was, working at my previous employer, and did it, while I'm breaking on the side, in my spare time. I'm also thinking of some ideas of how storage can be done for cards, graded card, non-graded, and came up with a toolbox idea, briefcase look. And my first iteration of this was not nice, by the way. Like, I got it. I look back at it and see it and I go, oh gosh, that's almost hideous, basically. But in your defense, even that, where I'm going with, even like the great companies like Microsoft and Apple, some of their early incarnations, they too would say, what were we thinking? Or yikes. And look where they are now. So no, you got to start somewhere.
I think people understand that.
No, for sure. And thank you to the industry for some grace here and there, because as you're building and developing a new item that's not ever been on in the industry for the most part, from a storage perspective, they've kind of seen, I think, the journey as well of what we've kind of came from to 7 years later, seeing where we're at and seeing all the how much it's changed, from 1 to 2 SKUs when we first start to 3, ran 3 SKUs up until 2021, and then now we've got 180 SKUs. So there's a lot of different things that have obviously happened, and in that beginning time, a lot of feedback, a lot of, I like to ask a lot of questions. And, when I sold some things in the beginning, I always ask, hey, is there something if you could change something, what would it be? Stuff like that. Just because getting insight, from other collectors and what they collected would help design like the next version of some of these things. So made some edits, made some, different color changes, things like that. And that's kind of been for the better. And, we've grown quite a bit over the last 7 years, adding all of these different products and elements and colors and styles. And it's it's been a fun ride.
It's nice to hear you say that too, Clint. Like, those collectors and people in the hobby, you're asking for their opinion, because that's going to be your consumer base. What it tells me is you care about 100%. Those folks, right? Yeah. Sure, you're a collector too, and you can design stuff. Oh, I like this, or this would bother me, so I'm not doing that. But you also, besides your own opinion, which is important, you took that feedback that you got from fellow collectors and people in the hobby and utilize that. I think it says a little bit, or it says a lot about, what kind of person you are, because that's important. A lot of times you hear stories where that isn't the case. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And, the consumer base can suffer from that. And
Yes.
so that's really cool.
Someone's at my door. I've got to get that. Be right back.
For nearly 50 years, Sports Collectors Digest has been the voice of the hobby, bringing you comprehensive coverage of the sports collectible industry. From industry news, auction results, market analysis, and in-depth stories about collectors and their collections, Sports Collectors Digest has everything you need to know about the hobby. SCD is also your leading source for listings of sports collectible dealers, card shops, card shows, and the latest from the industry's top companies. To check out all the latest news or to subscribe to the hobby's oldest magazine, visit sportscollectorsdigest.com or call 1-800-829-5561.
When you first started, I'm assuming you can correct me if I'm wrong, you kind of kept your job initially, right? You didn't go full time.
Yeah,
right
no.
away.
I honestly assumed it was going to be a side hustle for the rest of my life. I didn't assume that it would be a situation.
I'm
pretty content, with my life. I'm a content person. I don't need a lot of things. So for me, it was, it's welcomed, but I wasn't expecting it. And I wasn't expecting it to do what it's done, especially over the last three years. Really, I mean, kind of like what you just said, it was more to the, how can I create a solution and something that is, I think, needed in the industry, because, going to shows, for an example, we started going to shows in 2014, 15, when I, get a random, discussion with somebody and they're like, hey, you going to go to the Chicago show? And I'm like, shows are going on now? I remember as a kid going to a few local shows, but I'd never experienced a big show in Chicago, as a kid. So going there, meeting up with a few people that I'd met online, in Facebook and Instagram, that was fun to put faces to people that I had seen on there, meet them. I'm sure everybody in this industry loves that aspect, is, all these people that we've done deals and traded thousands of dollars of either, sports cards with, or sent thousands of dollars to, or received. You don't even know who they are for the most part sometimes. So until you see them in person, it's fun to kind of put names with faces. But I remember going to that show and going, man, we're throwing cardboard boxes and shoe boxes in a book bag, and we're walking around with a few $1,000s in our backpack. Just didn't make sense to me, as far as that aspect. So no, it's just it's such an interesting way that it's basically kind of came, from nothing to actually something that's almost needed now in the industry. From coming from the National, John, you came up to the booth. We got 20, 30 people at the booth at dang near all times. And it's part of the experience now. They want to come and they want to get their Zion case. They want to get it filled and stuff like that. So,
yeah, well, it's like I said in the intro, how crazy is that? Your company's become a verb, right? And people just say Zion. They don't have to even say case. It just, whether you're listening to a podcast or even let's be real. I'm sure you agree with it. Even if it's not a Zion case, it's just called the Zion.
It is. It is. Yep. It is literally.
It's funny. It's awesome. It's crazy. All at the same time. Listen, you're probably, you're the number one, I think, case manufacturer for a reason, because of the quality and the different options and call. I can go on. I don't want to sound like an info.
Yeah.
But because of that, your company's become a verb literally for every case, regardless of whether it's yours or not yours. I mean, you ever really think about that and hit you holy crap?
Oh yeah, no.
Think about where you started from.
It's unreal. No, I mean, a lot of guys start in their garage, right? And literally, my garage was my warehouse for the first 2 years, and didn't have my car in there, and just loaded the garage up. And my wife was a little upset because it don't make no sense to her while the garage is just sitting there full. And I'm like, listen, this is what we're doing, all right? So you got to bear with me. You married into this. It is what it is. She knew what she was getting into. So, but yeah, no, we've a lot of references over the last few years about, like Kleenex and you're the Kleenex of the tissue, industry now and stuff like that. So, and it is true. I mean, we got guys that come up to the shows now and they'll have a case and they'll be like, hey, I locked myself out of this or something. And I'm like, well, this isn't even mine. And they're like, oh, this isn't your case. And I'm like, no, you bought your case somewhere else clearly. And, but we'll even help them out even too, because that we're a part of the industry too. So it's like, we can be adaptable and go from there. But it is funny because they come up and they're like, oh yeah, I got a Zion case. And then they'll lift it up and it's not a Zion case. And it's like, oh yeah, it doesn't happen very often. But it does happen, occasionally, throughout the years of doing it. We've had maybe a handful of them, but it is funny that you say it like that because that's exactly how it is,
No, listen, I've been in the hobby 45 years and I know there are other manufacturers, but you're the big dog on the block. You put in the work. I'm not, it's not like someone crowned you that. You did it with blood, sweat, and tears and all that stuff. Like you said, we're starting out in your garage and not knowing, for sure. You obviously have a goal, but nothing's guaranteed, right? Yeah. And here you are, and you're big, like, it's a great story, but it's a great story because it's a great case, right? I mean, they're not mutually exclusive. One doesn't happen with the other not being true. So it's just, but I thought about that the other day. Like, it's like his company's a verb, like, you know what I mean? It's like every case is a Zion, whether it is or it isn't. It's because they're the best at what they do.
No, I appreciate that very much. Yes. And it is 100%, quality is we try to be the best we can when it comes to that. We try to be as innovative and, goal oriented as far as like what the collector is wanting to collect and how they want to do it as possible, from a functionality perspective. So yeah, we'll keep innovating and we'll keep growing. And, as a collector, like we said, it's very easy for me to adapt and see like, hey, what are we trying to collect here? What are we trying to do here? And understand the nuance of maybe another collector that's like, hey, I need XYZ. Because we get it all the time at shows, especially. They want to, hey, you need to get a case that just has 4 SGC cards and I need a ball on this one side. And it's like, yeah, look, I mean, that's not probably going to happen because I don't know the collector that needs just that alone. But hey, if you need help,
people don't really like while you do care about like what people and collectors want, right? People also realize it costs money to produce these things. And while you'd love to make like individual, like you have to make it like that costs money to make the product. If like 4 people buy it, the 4 people like that's not a winning proposition.
That's not a winning product. Yeah. So so although we do have opportunities, and I will do one-offs occasionally, but I tell people a lot when it comes to a one-off, it's not cheap because it's not cheap for me to get it made. So that's an unfortunate kind of situation, but it is what it is. If you're wanting what you want, it may cost a little bit more compared to, something that we can create like we have where we've got hundreds and thousands of units of certain things. So,
yeah, no doubt. Going back to when you kind of launched the company, obviously like you were still employed, but it's still a nervous time, right? Because you got to put money in your startup of your company and there's no guarantee. How nerve-wracking was that thinking back to when you first launched and with no guarantee of success? Obviously now it's a different story, but thinking back even when you first the company was started.
Very scared. Yeah, I've never done that before in my life. So I know that my wife was scared for us as well. One of the good things that I did have was the fact that I'd actually built a little bit of a breaking business up as well during the time frame. So like I explained to my wife, and she, understood after I had to break it down a little bit to her, is that we're going to be okay. We got a little bit of income coming in. Like I can run the business, and my breaks weren't like gosh, the braking industry is interesting now just from a pricing perspective. But back then, a lot of guys don't know that, I get a case of Bowman for $650 or $625. Or remember one time,
that's a box now.
That's a box now. Yeah. So at the end of the day, like, I look at back and I say, okay, I had 52 cases of 2017, Bowman baseball. Maybe I should have kept about 10 of those because they were only $600 something a piece to me. But in that time frame, you're looking at today and tomorrow and in the next week, and you're going to push through that product because we need to make a little money so that we can pay our bills and live life and everything else. But yeah, I think that was, one of the things too, is my wife knows that I'll grind too. So like if I got to get out there and do some odds and ends here and there, and I actually, when I left my company, I was kind of self-employed for about 6 months or so, and then got offered an opportunity also to work about 2-3 days a week and make some pretty good money. But they were some hard 2 days a week, 2 and 3 days a week, but it helped supplement a little bit during the early times in like 2018, 19. And then, again, I'll always grind to make sure that we're good to go. So, and not at the detriment of the business, because one of the goals, and this is what I think scared my wife so much, is that I told her we're not making money off of Zion cases. It'll just be reinvested. So like, I didn't go spend a bunch of money and then just try to take all the profits and go live anywhere. Like I literally just kind of snowballed it into next orders, next, ideas, a lot of engineer work, design work, things like that, to try to see what the next options were, what we could do design wise, the development of Mag Pro, things like that took 9 months to develop, and I developed that myself just by seeing what I thought would help the One Touch, which I know the One Touch or the magnetic card or magnetic case is a staple in our industry, and not in any way was I meaning to redefine it or anything like that, but I just seen a need for an opportunity for a little quality in a magnetic holder and some other little, factors into it that I think can help the collector have a case that actually stands up a little longer, doesn't scratch as often, has some functionality to it that's a little different than what we're used to. So there's all types of, ways that I probably could have taken that money that I made or have made with Zion, and I probably wouldn't be here today, to be honest with you, John, because I didn't reinvest into the company at that time. But that was kind of the idea, and I told my wife, we'll be fine. I'll get through it, right? We'll find ways to make it work and whatnot. And now we're, like you said, the last 2 years it's been a little different because we grind still. Don't get me wrong. We go to 60 shows a year, and we're out in the industry, and we have a couple other businesses in the industry that we handle shows, whether it's rental cases, things like that. So we've got a lot of irons in the fire, but yeah, it's 5 years ago. I didn't see that at all, for sure. That wasn't even on the Richter scale.
Yeah, one thing I want to speak to too, you mentioned grinding. Like, I think the number, there's various reasons different businesses or companies don't make it. But I think number one on that list, Clint, is people get into and don't want to put in the work, or it's too much and it just overwhelms them, right? And I'm sure you have days or moments too like that.
Oh yeah.
But like you said, you put in the work, it's got to be done. You're going to do it. And that's leads into your success, where I think others, get in there and then it's like I just said, it's a little bit much. And unfortunately, not that I want people to fail, but that's sometimes comes with the territory. Awesome catching up with Clint Anderson from Zion. He's built that company into a juggernaut to the point, it's really, there are very few other case makers going into that arena. How are you going to beat them, right? It's very tough. Not impossible, but very tough. And, for a guy who's built a company to that level, he's really fairly humble about that. Like confident, but pretty humble. I had a great time talking with him, and we're not done, right? That was part one of our 2-part conversation with Clint. So come back next Friday for the conclusion of that conversation. We're going to hear from our Hobbies the People announcer, and we'll be back with some closing thoughts.
Time for our Hobby is the People announcer of the week.
Hey everyone, this is Alex here from Relics Cards and Collectibles in Toronto, representing the Relics squad. I just want to remind everyone, the hobby is the people.
If you'd like to be the Hobby is the People announcer of the week, do a WAV or MP3 file and send it to sportscardnationpc@gmail.com.
That's a wrap for this week. Huge thanks to you, the listeners out there, because without you, there is no us. If you like the show, we truly appreciate positive reviews. Big ups to our great guests who drive the show and our awesome sponsors who make it all possible. Sports Card Nation will be back next week, but don't forget to catch either Hobby Quick Hits or Card Mentions coming up on Monday. I'll leave you with this. How do we change the world? One random act of kindness at a time. Remember, the hobby is the people.
Hobby Hotline is the hobby's only live interactive call-in show. Join some of your favorite hobby personalities every Saturday, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific, to discuss the hottest hobby topics. If you miss us live, catch us after the fact on all major podcast platforms. Follow us on socials at Hobby Hotline.
Hobby News Daily is your homepage of the hobby, providing original writing, exclusive gem rate data, a daily morning minute podcast, and some of the best content creators in the hobby. Remember, hobbynewsdaily.com and @Hobby News Daily on social. Happy collecting!